another We Talk Chelsea podcast, a podcast with three Chelsea loving friends united for a love of Chelsea Football Club. And there is no game to talk about because it is boring international week that nobody cares about. But we're going to go and soldier through. There's lots to talk about. It's never dull in Chelsea. Even in international week, there's always something to talk about. Chelsea potentially facing a points discussion. We're going to preview Newcastle away as well, and also potentially touch upon Emma Hayes leaving Chelsea after 11 years. Chaps, how are we all doing? Charlie, how are you keeping?
Yeah, no, all good. Obviously, it's as a sort of club over country football fan. These sort of international breaks are a bit of a chore, to be honest. And also, with the momentum that we had leading up to this break, it would have been quite nice to go straight into that Newcastle match without the break. But hey ho, we're still here, we're still alive. So we should be thankful. How about you, Tom? Is Tim gone?
He's there, but I'm muting his mic because he's doing something with his camera or something. I know what he's doing. He's just off camera doing something like that. So I'll mute his mic until he appears again. Yeah, not too bad. If I'm being honest, it's just boring international week, isn't it? It really is. The games like we're England fans, like in the grand scheme of things. You know what I mean? When it comes to tournaments, I watch the tournament, but I think I've gone on the days where I'd watch, every qualifier, every friendly, every kick of the ball when we're playing terrible teams in the midweek. It was Saturdays and Wednesdays back then. I do quite like how they shifted it from Fridays to Mondays though, because it gives more time for the players to recover, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. But who cares? It's international week. Temba, do you bleed Three Lions?
No, unfortunately not. I think every international break is just the time away from football for me. Personally, like the sort of downtime you get to just take that stress away, I suppose. And it's just going to add to more stress if you watch England with Gareth Southgate at the moment. I think everyone can probably agree he's not the man for the job anymore. But besides from that, yeah, I think it gives us a little bit of a break away from Chelsea. But as we know with Chelsea, there's never really a quiet day. Even during international break, there's always news coming out of the club here, there, and everywhere. And I suppose that's why we're here to cover it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, as we touched upon here, and I'm sure you've read it in the news, Chelsea face impossible, and Temba's disappeared again. It's like a magician. It's like he's here, he's gone. It's amazing. Chelsea face possible points deduction for financial fair play breaches, historical financial fair play breaches under the Roman Abramovich era. And I think that an interesting thing on this one is actually, Temba, I believe Chelsea self-reported themselves for these alleged breaches. If I'm right in thinking this, they've gone and notified the authorities and say, "Hey, we've noticed some accounting irregularities. Please don't give us a massive fine. Please don't give us a massive points deduction."
Yeah, and I think it was something that Simon Jordan said. I think I agree with him. It's probably the fact that Chelsea may have been trying to negotiate that price down, and obviously once they've seen those things going through the sale, in case it was ever brought up in their distribute, they can be like, you know what, we flagged it up first, so you can't. Well, maybe they may get away with it. Unlikely. The club will probably still face action, but as owners themselves, they can't be held liable to not reporting any sort of financial mistrust or funds that have gone by and they've sort of like swept it under the carpet. And maybe it's brought to light the fact that some of these players that we bought in the past, a lot of dirty dealings had to be done to get those players.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting, especially when we've actually seen the ramifications of a breach in terms of Everton given the 10 points deduction now in the relegation places. Certainly making it exciting if you're a Sheffield United fan at the bottom of the table or Burnley fan at the bottom of the table looking to potentially gather some points. But it's interesting, isn't it, Charlie? Just because when you look at it, the stewardship of Everton was done under, rest in peace, Bill Camright. The breaches were done at that point, but also it's a completely different ownership at this point. And an argument could be made, not an argument I strictly agree with, but it's me being devil's advocate, Charlie, but an argument could be made that because it was done under different managers, a different ownership scheme, that, it's hard. What kind of punishment would be considered fair? Because in my opinion, if we've if we're in breach of something and got those irregularities, we shouldn't be not punished for that. It's weird to say as a Chelsea fan, because in the interest of fairness, in the grand scheme of things, I do believe this goes on massively, and there's very clever accounting techniques in all big six clubs. But we shouldn't escape a ban. But an argument could be made that it's a different ownership, so why should Chelsea be punished for that? Couldn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it could be. I've had a bit of a think about this recently, and at first I was like, we've owned up to it, and these American guys have done the right thing, and they probably will get that they will be taken into consideration. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, we've ultimately benefited and even now we do benefit indirectly from misdemeanors in the past. And I suppose that's what they're going to bring up is like, if they can angle it in some way and say, look, player X was bought due to, when he shouldn't have been bought, or if there was something underhand that went on to get player X. And by getting player X, it contributed towards Team Y, and Team Y was the one that won the Champions League. And as a result of winning the Champions League, we re-qualified for the Champions League, which had a financial incentive, and also we managed to attract other players like Lukaku. All right, it didn't quite work out, but there's the knock-on effect, I suppose, is what I'm trying to get at. Is that if we've done this consistently over a period of a few years, you can see the advantage on the pitch and off the pitch as well, because obviously we've seen they're both intertwined. But you can have an element of both of those. So I think they'll come down on us without a doubt. How similar what we've done to Everton's is probably yet to be seen. I don't think there's enough out about exactly what we've done. It's a bit vague at the moment. It's a bit like, there was some money being pumped in from the Cayman Islands or something. It's all a bit kind of vague what we did compared to Everton. It's a different case completely. I think Man City's one is probably a bit more comparable. So I think that they've definitely got, and obviously these it's like anything. It's like any court battle. Everton will be used as a standard, as a staple for future breaches. So I'm guessing it'll be something like that. But I think definitely we're in the firing line. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing on this was, I think whilst there's no official charges that have been brought to light and that's been made, there's no list of 115 charges. We won't talk about a certain club's 115 charges because I don't want to prejudice them potentially getting in any way possible punished, because that would be fantastic if they would, because if you cheat, you're a cheater, let's face it. But if we're found to be done cheating, it looks like at September that it was done through, offshore payments being made, to agents and then players being offered to kind of, maybe sway players to join Chelsea that probably otherwise wouldn't have done so. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, so one of the things I saw was about Eden Hazard. His agent was given a hefty fee, sort of an offshore payment to make sure that deal was done, or maybe after the deal was done. And the other one was Antonio Conte. So as we know, he took us to court anyway after that whole fiasco. So I don't know how much was actually done to try bring him in. And to be honest, it's something I suppose it probably goes on a lot more in football than we actually know. We see it nowadays, quite common with players sort of agreeing with clubs, although they should talk to the other club first instead of going directly to the player, sort of tapping up. Whereas certain clubs do report it, other clubs kind of accept the fact that their player is probably going to negotiate, come to some sort of agreement with another club before actually either handing in a transfer request or receiving an official bid from the said club they were supposed to go to. But I think with Roman Abramovich and obviously the amount of wealth he had at the time, it probably was one of those things. It was like, you want this, I'll give it to you. Money's not an object to me. I can, sort your family out for 10 years, give you a nice car, get you the nicest apartment in London or whatever. And, just make sure you play for Chelsea at the end of the day. And I don't know if you guys have been listening to Mykhail's podcast.
Yeah, yeah. The thing with is it Mykhail's family? Was it his dad that went missing or something along those lines?
No, well, yeah, that was the first story, but yeah, you can elaborate on that if you want.
Yeah, I think there was I think there's some videos been around doing the rounds on social media. John Obi Mikel, was it his father that was kidnapped or
Yeah,
something like that in
yeah,
Nigeria? Like
quite.
his father was kidnapped in Nigeria, and Roman
Yeah.
Abramovich, being big Billy Bollocks, came up to him and says, "Look, bro." I'm sure he probably didn't say bro. He probably said comrade. Probably didn't say that either. But I'm sure he went up to him and said, "Look, do you want me to find him for you? I'll send some people in." That's the level of rich that we all aspire to be. Let's face it. But no, I digress. Tim, what was the issue on Obi Mikel's podcast?
I just forgot now. It. What was you just talking about?
To do
Oh
with
God, I've just had a
Abramovich
Doing the
brain.
money, yeah, the Abramovich
and the
money.
money. Sort of, no, there is no.
Oh
kind
yeah,
of,
yeah, that was it.
yeah.
When he was about to sign for Chelsea, he had already agreed a pre-contract with Man United. He did the whole
Yes.
shirt thing,
Yeah.
and his agent was like, "Well, no, you're supposed to sign for Chelsea," sort of thing. Yeah, no, you're gonna sign for Chelsea. I think it was probably agreed by his agent and Roman Abramovich, and they actually snuck him out of the back door in Norway, and he was missing for 2 days. Like they had to file a police report saying he was missing. But the reality is that he went and done another deal with Chelsea to actually sign another pre-contract with them. This then went to FIFA because Mykhailo wasn't able to play for a year, and eventually it was sorted out that he registered for Chelsea. But like I say, a lot of those backhand dealings we've seen. Gail Kakuta, another famous example of us going beyond the means to try get young players. I think there was
that was the Gael Kakuta one? Was that a transfer ban for a window or a couple of windows? Or was
I
it a
think
fine?
we were banned
That
for
was
2 windows.
Yeah, that was the example, wasn't it, of that was
Yeah.
used to get us banned for those windows. And there was,
Yeah.
well, I'm sure around the time of Mykhailo, I'm sure I might be wrong in this, but I'm sure Robin was something like that, or Czech, Robin or Czech. I'm pretty sure one of those two. Because around that time, I think Robin we stole from Man United as well. I'm sure there was two that we stole around the same sort of time, and it would make sense that it was Robin or Mykhailo. Sorry, Robin and Mykhailo. I'm sure it was Robin, and obviously that turned out to be great. Well, they both turned out to be a great bit of business. So, there we go.
Yeah, and like you say there, well, with us being the richest club and sort of no FFP around, you could sort of offer, and that at that time there was no agent fee blocking things with FIFA. We could offer them anything and everything and that sort of thing. And I suppose Roman had the best people around him to sort of keep that secret. I mean, it's only come light to what now, just about now, and it's been maybe 10 years since all of that rumbling. So yeah, however it was done pretty well. But I suppose with him being sanctioned, maybe everything has come to light now, and we may never have known for another 10, 20 years. But obviously, it could have hurt us if he was still our owner even more than it has. So hopefully, we'll see what's done with it. But Everton being an example, I don't see how we don't get a point deduction from it.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like the level of point destruction that we potentially could get. Because if Everton's breach, I think it was for reporting losses of 300 and something ish million pounds or something like that, and 10 points deduction. That's for one charge.
Yeah.
If Chelsea have got multiple charges, it's kind of set a precedent. Like, what happens? Do you get, is it 10 points for everything? Do you get a straight relegation? Is it something like what happened with Juventus in the early 2000s when they were relegated down to Serie C? Like, what could realistically, because we're no stranger to it, Charlie, what would you think would it? I appreciate it's difficult because we're unaware of the actual charges brought against Chelsea, but what would you consider to be a fair punishment, and what would you think would be ridiculous? Because I don't think we're beyond the realms of potentially being relegated for it.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a bit of a weird one because it has made rack my brains a little bit. Is the timing of a lot of this because Everton obviously was. I don't know the ins and outs too much, but I'm guessing this had been known about all through last season as well. This is accounts basically would have been made up like they usually backdate for quite a long time, so they would have known about this for quite a while. And obviously the timing is interesting because yes, okay, it's 10 points and they're not happy, but actually I can't see them not staying up just based upon the way that they're playing and everything, unless it affects the players that much. they'll easily crawl out of this.
I don't think it would. I don't think it would.
You don't think it would affect the players too much?
I don't think it would affect the players. No, I don't think they care. They know that they're winning on the pitch. You know, they'll get the
Yeah, but
confidence
if
from
they're
that. They're not going to be
maybe,
looking at the table at that point.
but in their head, are they not thinking we've got an very outside chance of getting, I don't know, top 10, I don't know, something like that, or top. I mean, I don't think they're going to get into Europe, but they're playing okay, and they're sort of winning matches, aren't they, here and there, and they're sort of mid-table sort of team at the moment. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that it's interesting the timing, because if this point deduction would have happened last season or the season before, they would have gone down. And now it hasn't. And my theory there is that possibly the Premier League have this thing where there are certain teams that make them tick and bring them money. Chelsea's one of them, City's one of them, and Everton probably is one of them as well. Everton's up there. It's probably the top 8 probably clubs, I'd say, in terms of support, in terms of like reach and things like that. They've been in the Premier League as long as I can remember. I don't think in fact, I think they're one of the longest in top flight altogether. Including sort of Liverpool, Man. Even more than Man United. Even more than Man United, because they went down in the 80s, I think, or 70s. So. And obviously with this new stadium coming as well, it would cripple them. Going down would be an absolute disaster for them. So I suppose with Chelsea and Man City, I don't know. I just think that I don't think it does the Premier League any favours, like having those 2 clubs in the Championship, even if it's just for 1 year. I just don't think it, because players will leave. There's no way that like certain players will stay. And managers may leave as well. I think it would be the end for Guardiola. I really do. I think if that was forced upon him, I can't see him managing in the Championship. Just can't see it. I think his time would be up. I think he was on a promise as well, wasn't he, by all accounts, from the Qataris or whatever, that they hadn't medalled at all. And so he was kind of he's in a bit of a rock and a hard place at the moment, because he needs to if it is proven, he's basically been lied to. So he could well just fall out with them. It's possible.
Yeah,
you never know.
It is possible, and you make an interesting point when maybe I'm not going to say names for the basis of it, but let's just go to Pez terms. Manchester Blue. Let's just say that. They've got 115 charges set against them, haven't they, Temba? In the grand scheme of things, Everton's got 115. Sorry, Everton's got 1 charge. Chelsea could potentially got multiple charges. I'd hope nowhere near the level of charges levelled against them by the Premier League that Manchester Blue have. But in the grand scheme of things, when you compare it to something like that, if you're looking at incremental type stuff in terms of how many charges leveled against them, if you're looking at Manchester Blues level, surely that is like, what would be a fair? And I appreciate this is we talk Chelsea, but when it comes to that, it's got to be. I'm not talking about stripping trophies or anything like that at all, because I think once you get to that point, the team's still got to go there and win the trophy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes, they've had that advantage to get that. They still got to win the trophy. And, historically, for years, they didn't win the trophy. But surely, points deductions as a minimum. But, if there's multiple breaches, like, please feel free in the chat to say what you think would be fair. But for me, personally, it would be relegation. And it would be putting down to League Two. They've got the money to get straight back up there year on year. They did it with Rangers. Look happened in Rangers in Scotland. They were taken down to the 3rd. It took them 5 years to come back up? I think they didn't get promoted one of the seasons.
Yeah.
And then they come back and won the league again. So it's not beyond the realms. What would you, when you evaluate it that way in terms of the amount of charges level against them, what would be a fair punishment in the grand scheme of things for a club like Manchester Blue?
Well, when you're going over 100 charges, you're probably looking at like Vanarama North League or something, because that's an astronomical amount of charges just for one club. I suppose you couldn't even quantify it, because I think what with Everton being charged, isn't it clubs around them are liable to fees as well to ask Everton something around 20 million?
Yeah,
now?
so I believe it's the 3 clubs that were that were relegated last season. So Leeds, Leicester, and Can't remember the other
Leeds,
one. It was
Leicester, and
Southampton.
Southampton.
Southampton. So there's rumours that they're going to launch a lawsuit against them for £300 million, which is exactly the money they lost Everton in the grand scheme of things. Is it, they know this is money they don't have. So what are they trying to do? Like financially cripple them? The clubs, they got their parachute payments. They're going to come back. I think it's a bit ridiculous at that point. But anyway, I digress. I can't even remember the avenue that we were going down there.
How to quantify the Man City charges? Yeah. Again, it's a ridiculous amount. I suppose it's quite quiet right now because obviously the legal case will take a long time to build, and sort of the final plans to charge the club in some sort of way. I don't know if that means Man City are banned from UEFA competitions for the next 10 years or whatnot, or kind of what happened with Liverpool back in. Well, I suppose English clubs were banned. Was it 85 to 90 because of Liverpool?
Yeah, little bit different.
Yeah,
a little bit different reasons they were banned.
The context was completely different, but you know what I mean. Like that type of ban you could see just for Manchester City, where they're out of European competition for so many years. But then again, what happens if they win this year's Champions League? Do you know what I mean? Then what? Because they've already been charged, but obviously legally it hasn't gone to sort of court and settled.
It's all tied up in the courts. Yeah, it's all tied up in the courts from what I can see, and there's a lot of stuff. I get frustrated with the reporting on it because I think there should be more highlights put upon it. But I know why it's done. It's it doesn't prejudice the claim in the court. You don't want to prejudice the court case because Manchester Blue could use that potentially as a defence to get it thrown out completely. So I understand why. So hopefully it'd be interesting to see what happens in that respect. But we don't know these charges. We really don't. It's really just pure speculation at this point, isn't it, chap? So, but hopefully, if we have breached, we get punished, but it's not too severe a punishment that it's to the detriment of Chelsea and the very early signs of a season kind of changing around a little bit. I briefly wanted to touch upon this week as well that Emma Hayes, the Chelsea women's manager, we don't often talk about Chelsea women's. I'll confess, I don't watch Chelsea women's football team, but she's leaving the club after 11 years at Chelsea. She's very much a stalwart of Chelsea Football Club and laid the foundation to turn Chelsea from an absolutely, a team that wasn't doing very well to win multiple trophies. And it's kind of strange, like Temba, to me, like when you look at the level of trophies that she's won at the club, she's kind of got that kind of, female Alex Ferguson leaving Manchester United after all these years kind of vibe. She's taken up a big job in the United States, but it does have that kind of feeling to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I suppose she's one of the people that hugely benefited from Roman Abramovich taking over the club because he invested so much into Cobham, into the women's team, into the facilities there. And he wanted Chelsea to be the best in every avenue. And obviously he got it right with Emma Hayes. She's previously spoken about the previous ownership. She said that it felt like a family to her, and it's always been a family to her. And it's sort of a testament that she's been previously linked to getting the men's job, which obviously I dispute because once you start doing that, you go to uncharted territories of bringing the women's game down. Again, fantastic achievement. She's won 6 leagues, I think 4 FA Cups or 5 FA Cups, and many more trophies as well. Obviously, they're in the Champions League. They drew 2-2 to Real Madrid. They should have beaten 3-1 with the silly, awful decisions but UEFA refs, as I've always said, are probably even worse than Premier League refs, and VAR as well. They don't have VAR, so again, I suppose she maintained her composure in the end by not going too much off in the game. But like you say, it's been a fantastic run for her. She said she didn't want to stay. I think that we saw a report earlier about that Paul Winstanley didn't give her enough money or something along those lines, and that came out to be false. She said that she wanted to step away from the Chelsea job because she wanted to spend time with her family, because the last 12 years or whatever she hasn't been able to be with her family. So I suppose, managing an international team, I'm not sure quite with the women's game, but obviously with the men's game, you're not with them every week and It's maybe once
more
every
time.
month or once every two months or so. So maybe in that sense, it's a lot easier for her. And obviously, the US national women's team, we know they're very massive. So again, congrats to her. So that's my
Yeah,
thoughts.
she's off to make an absolute crap ton of money, and best of luck to her. Let's hope Chelsea women's team can win the Champions League and sign it off in style for Emma Hayes. We're going to move across now through to a slight preview on here for Newcastle versus Chelsea here on Saturday, 3 p.m. kickoff. 3 p.m. seems a bit of a weird time for the travel distance. I don't know what it was. I can't remember who I was speaking to, but they mentioned surely like a game and that distance and travel, surely it should be like a 5 p.m. kickoff for all the London people going up to Newcastle, because it's a long way to go, isn't it? But
Yeah.
anyway, that's irrelevant. I'm just talking about a thing. But when we look at this game, and we'll briefly touch upon it, because I think we're going to do a whole episode on this that will be released later on this week with one of our Newcastle friends. It's interesting. I think now with this international break, it's kind of not played in our favour a little bit, because it's given Newcastle an opportunity to recover from the injuries that they've sustained in this very, very short period. They're very, very depleted in terms of injuries at the moment. And we, on Saturday, in theory, we should be seeing Christopher Nkunku on the bench. So it's kind of it's an exciting time, isn't it, Charlie, when you look at this thing? Do you think it's detrimental to Chelsea having to have this international break at this time to give Newcastle an opportunity to get their players as fit as they possibly can, ready for Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and not just that. It's probably going to break the momentum we had leading up to it as well. So it's a double whammy, if you like. So let's see how it plays out. I think it's regards to the 3 o'clock kickoff, it's certainly better than a 12:30 after international. It's so I'm not too fussed about that. But it's going to be a really tough game, but a great test. I'm actually looking forward to it, to be honest. I didn't, not for a while have I looked forward to a Chelsea game. Not saying I'm confident, but I'm just intrigued by the match
Proposition, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm just intrigued to see what we do. I mean, we've seen it before, where we go one step forward and 2 steps back. But I'm just intrigued to see if we can actually use the last couple of games to actually go again, if you like, on Saturday. Yeah.
In a weird way, it kind of feels, Tem, that sometimes we say this that this is a big game. This is a really big game, but this is an example of what Chelsea should be able to do away from home against a wounded Newcastle side. This should be games that Chelsea should, in theory, be picking up the points, isn't it? Like getting all 3 points at St James's Park.
I don't know about that.
When you look historically, yeah, but when you look at the injuries and the weaknesses that they're going to have in terms of the depth that they're going to be able to put out on Saturday, they've got a very depleted defensive line. So is Eddie Howe? He's known for playing that kind of free flowing, counter-attacking football. So is he could just sit deep, and it's a trouble that we have every single time is that low block. Is Eddie Howe going to low block, and how is Chelsea going to react to it?
Yeah, I think that's the big question. I think with Dan Burn out and Botman out, obviously it's a big advantage to us, but I think Eddie Howe's got them so well drilled defensively. It's up to us whether we can match them, because I think Newcastle are probably the most physical team in the league at the moment, bar West Ham. So how do we show up on the day? Do we sort of play so technical that we manage to break through their lines and score a goal? I don't think we can go, 50-50 with them, because they'll bully us. I think that's one aspect of our team I would really like us to improve in. But I don't know. Big test. St. James Park, we've historically been very terrible there. So, let's see.
Yeah, be interesting for sure. And when we review the game on Monday at 9:30, hopefully we'll be reviewing 3 points at St. James's Park. But let's do a quick run round. Usually these podcasts tend to last an hour, but with international week and no game to review, and we're going to do an actual special episode for the Newcastle versus Chelsea preview that you'll be able to see on Thursday, I believe. Thursday, not too sure on the time. So if you make sure you hit the subscribe button for that, we've been live on TKS TV. I greatly appreciate you all for joining us. Please, if you have only just discovered us, please hit that subscribe button. It'll be really, really helpful. We will see you on Thursday and live next week at 9:30 p.m. Take care. Up the Chelsea.
Chelsea.